RWA, because I think that sounds better. And there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we got to start with Bill Blair. And Rex Glacier says, here it comes. Liberals opening the floodgates to foreigners to get into the military with no security or background checks. Yep, this was announced yesterday by Bill Blair. The bottom line is this, he says, the Canadian forces must grow, although we must maintain our high standards. Too many people who want to join the Canadian forces are being turned away or spending years in the enrollment process. We must do better and be more flexible and more creative. Now, I have questions about the numbers of people who are being turned away, what their composition is, how many years in the enrollment process have been spent by how many people. Like, these are kind of vague allegations that I would love to have more details about if we're going to be changing fundamentally our enrollment process to deal with this terrible situation, right? We must do better, he says, and be more flexible and more creative. Well, how could you be more creative? Bill carries on. This is urgent, and we cannot be patient. We can't be patient. Well, that's the worst way to make a decision. We have to buy a car and we have to buy it absolutely now, this one or that one. Yes, they're both overpriced by $10,000. We must change the way in which we recruit, he says, and retain the members of the Canadian forces. Well, maybe stop calling them racist far-right acolytes. That for a start. I've asked our military leaders to take a hard look at expanding eligibility for recruitment and abolishing outdated medical requirements. You know, like being able to run up a flight of stairs. Bill Blair continues, I've also asked them to look into creating a probationary period to enroll new members, especially permanent residents. And I've asked them to look at ways to streamline the security clearance process. So we're going to add permanent residents with no background checks. Great. Streamline clearance, security clearance. Give me a break. And he says, we've got to take a fresh look at recruitment and retention and implement new innovative measures that will actually fill the 15,000 person gap between our current strength and our authorized strength. I have every confidence that the Canadian forces can do what's required. I have no faith in this Liberal government doing what is best for Canada and best for the Canadian military. They've decimated the military, absolutely decimated it. And they're going to try and remake it into their woke post-national army? Are they going to just hand it over to the EU? Like, will Canada become the next EU state? It's very, very concerning because the moves being made seem to be very, very purposeful. And if you tried to stop it, you very quickly run into a stopgap, right? Like, I'm not powerful enough by myself to do this. I need a lot of help to do this, to fix this problem. And how could I do that, right? And so people run into that every day and just carry on, except the Diagolon guys. Those guys are like, you know what? We'll get a lawyer, we'll fundraise, we'll get it done. And they did. The Coots guys are out because of Diagolon. Donald Best is responding to this. He says, by arming foreigners who haven't even been in Canada long enough to become citizens, Defense Minister Blair is committing a traitorous act. Any Canadian federal or provincial government that allows non-citizens as police officers or soldiers is deliberately creating an armed force with no loyalty except to the political class that hired them. Non-citizens are far more likely to perform acts of violence against citizens and far more likely to obey illegal orders. What happened during the Freedom Convoy? Who were those people, those police officers who were very violent? Why has nobody been held accountable for those violent actions? And why is it being ignored? Because this is the long-term plan. That's what I think. This is the long-term plan. Bringing in foreign military? Oh yeah, that's definitely part of the plan. We just got to figure out a way to make it palatable to Canadians and maybe even, hey, get us to pay for it, right? No, non-citizens should have authority or power over Canadian. No non-citizens should have authority or power over Canadian citizens. Absolutely correct. And No says, I have absolutely no intention of lowering the standards, says Bill Blair, about getting out of the death spiral of personnel shortage in the Canadian military. They created the death spiral of personnel shortage by their behavior and how they treated their troops. And they did that on purpose in order to usher in this woke new era of our Canadian military with non-citizens serving their political masters, right? CTV News says, Canada's military will soon have a new leader. Will it finally be a woman? Oh, maybe it'll be a trans woman of color, right? Oh, maybe Justin Trudeau can put blackface on and a wig. Bam. Done, right? We've got our trans woman of color, everyone. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? They've absolutely torched our military. If you weren't on board, if your name was Vance or any of the guys after him until Air, you got sexually misconducted out of that job because you wouldn't do what the ruling elite wanted. And now they've got somebody who they want. And, maybe he's retired. Maybe he's going on to a new position somewhere because he's proven his ability to take orders and do whatever it takes, right? So they're ushering him out and they're going to move somebody else in, and they're going to virtue signal with this. They're absolutely going to virtue signal with this. They're going to put somebody in like a trans woman of color, and they're going to celebrate it like crazy. And then they're going to say, we can't figure out why we can't recruit. And then they're going to say, we're going to start promoting this, become a Canadian military officer, and then get your Canadian citizenship after 6 months of service or something like that. And they'll put those posters up on beaches in like, the Middle East or Africa or something like that. And that's where they're going to recruit. They're going to say, we can't get Canadians to do these jobs. Meanwhile, they're saying, we hate you Canadians. We hate your white skin. We hate your English. We hate your logical thinking. We hate everything. We hate your questioning orders about shooting on those people or whatever it is we're telling you to do. Take those truckers and drive them out to the middle of nowhere and leave them there. We hate you. And they're telling us this through all of their actions and their policies. And then they say, we can't get Canadians to do this job. So they'll bring in temporary foreign workers to fill the Canadian military. It's absolutely insulting. These people should be removed. I can't believe our country is so terrible. National Post says tent encampments point to a persistent failure of government. I thought, yes, they sure do. Not the failure you think. Not the failure you think at all. Cities should provide encampments with electricity, bathrooms, clean water, heat, and other basic amenities, the review says. Well, I thought it was a failure of government, a persistent failure of government. Like we shouldn't have tent encampments. Not that we should be putting up permanent structures with heat and hydro and all the rest. Like soon we're going to have Wi-Fi too, clean water, showers. Are you kidding? Here's what this is. And the judge is also the judge that's overseeing the China foreign investigation, like foreign interference in our elections stuff. She's a completely cracked liberal justice. That's what this is. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay. This is the National Post. Complete failure of government led to encampments. And we just need to make them permanent and make them, absolute hard shelters that can house all of the people who are here, and keep the borders open because sure, we can house 1 million people. We'll just build a second story on this encampment. Unhoused people have a fundamental right to live in encampments, and that right is violated when authorities tear them down, Canada's housing advocate says in a piercing report released Tuesday. This is back in February. Okay, this is February 13th, just the day before Valentine's Day. Marie-Josie Huel. Oh, maybe it's a different one. I thought it was the same one. I could be wrong. I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up right now. Hold on. I got it wrong. You'll have to forgive me, but her name, the person doing the foreign inquiry, is Mary Josie Hogue, Hogue, and this judge's name is Mary Josie Huel, Houle. It's close. It's like one letter off. If the L was a G and moved over one, it would be the same. So apologies. I just recognized patterns, and that was one. And I was like, man, okay. Now that we're corrected, we're on the record. This is not the same judge. Carrying forward. In a piercing report, not the same judge, Marie-Josie Huel, says the expansion of homeless encampments across the country is a national human rights crisis that requires immediate action and coordination involving all levels of government. Tent encampments, the report says, are the result of Canada's persistent failure to protect people's right to housing, which the federal government officially recognized in 2019. Governments must ensure that homeless people have permanent housing as soon as possible, and in the meantime, authorities need to equip encampments with basic services such as clean water, garbage removal, so residents can live in dignity, the report says. Prisons have these things. Like, this is a no-brainer. It's very simple. The idea that we need to build permanent encampment structures and the idea that unhoused people, homeless people, have a fundamental right to live in encampments, that's not right. That's some cracked thinking there, if you ask me. Here's what they want to do to solve housing. Now, this is a presentation to City Hall in Oakville, and he's making the argument that the reason these city councilors are acting the way they are acting is because they're being promised $36 million, but he thinks it's actually going to be $25 million. So the Housing Accelerator Fund promises $36 million if they can get all these houses built. And so what they're proposing is a right by, I can't remember what it's called. It's a right by, it's in here. Hold on. I have to show you. An as of right. So I'll show the full desktop. The as of right is in Canadian property law, as of right refers to the entitlement of a property owner to use or develop their property without the need for a public hearing process or a vote of the municipal council, as long as the proposed use complies with the zoning bylaws. So what they want to do is the Housing Accelerator Fund application is worth $36 million. And they've changed the as of right to permit 4 units per property. So if I buy a property for whatever price, $1 million, let's say I buy it for $1 million, and I look at that property and say, okay, 1 unit is worth $1 million. 4 units would be worth, way more than $1 million. So it would be worth my money and time to develop these single family homes on the left into quad apartment buildings. So 4 unit condominiums, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 condominiums or apartments or whatever it is. But you buy a family home, you knock it down, you in its place, in its footprint, you put up a 4-plex, and you're celebrated because you are making it so the municipality is getting that $36 million for the housing accelerator. And so on the left-hand side, you see the residential neighborhood as it is now. And on the right-hand side, you see the residential neighborhood developed with as of right. You'd have absentee owners and short-term students, but this is existing residential owners, right? So how quickly does this neighborhood turn into a slum, right? And it is a very scary prospect. This is a different view, right? Multi-fourplexes in a residential neighborhood, right? And they're not kidding. Right? This is the excuse for this is to solve the Sheridan College housing shortage. Is that a justified use of these? Well, is that justified to allow people to purchase these houses and absolutely change everything about the residential neighborhood? Here's Pierre Poilievre. And so in this instance, the federal government, using its accelerator funded money, is motivating the city councilors to go ahead with this bad plan. And this citizen is saying, you're going to change this neighborhood pursuing this money, and that's bad. And I think that he's right. I think it's bad. And Pierre Poilievre is asked, what else can you do to fix the housing problem? And you know what he doesn't say? Anything about immigration. And you know what he does talk about? Getting people to get involved in the electoral process to make sure that pro-home building people are elected over top of people who are not for building homes. Here's this exchange.
Transporting materials, but also, for example, drywall has natural gas ingredients in it. It becomes more expensive with the carbon tax. By axing the tax, we'll bring homes that people can afford. But the biggest tax of all is the massive delays in getting permits for construction. And this is where I put the challenge over to the business community. The home builders tell us, what I just said, the home builders have been saying for years. My question to the home builders is, what have you done to defeat gatekeeping local politicians in elections? Where is your coalition to defeat these politicians, these mayors and councillors who stand in the way of home building? Because if you don't do that, it's not going to change. You can write another essay or commission another paper by the C.D. Howe Institute, but if these politicians keep getting elected to block home building, then they'll keep blocking home building. So that's what I mean when I say the business community actually has to step up, because the only way we're going to make homes affordable for people is to get the gatekeeping out of the way at all 3 levels of government. And it's time that the home building companies actually play a leadership role in the politics of driving that change.
Weird, right? Become lobbyists, he says. Why aren't you lobbying for more politicians who agree with what you want, right? Your business is building homes. Why aren't you advocating for it in the politics of it? Weird, because they can't do anything about the immigration, and immigration is bringing in 1 million people plus a year, and temporary immigration, foreign students, temporary students, and a regular immigration track, it's 1.5 million, 1.2, 1.5 million, around there. And like the temporary foreign students are 500,000. The actual straight immigration track is 450 or coming up to 5, depending on the year. 23 was 450, 24 is 465, next year is 500. Temporary foreign students were like 900,000. So if you turn that off, the supply and demand is going to get fixed quickly, but they don't want to turn it off because I think that it would crash our economy. I really think it would crash our economy. Here is an interesting juxtaposition. This is illegal aliens arriving in America on the top. No papers check. Americans getting on a subway in New York City. Papers, please. Isn't that strange? Right? Don't you think that's strange? They're getting their bags checked. These people are crossing into the United States without any kind of check of anything. And people are saying it's illegal or bad if you feel like what they're doing is wrong. And here, you can not be searched, but you're not using the subway, right? This is absolutely abhorrent. In Wales, which is in the United Kingdom, they're building migrant camps, distribution camps. So Active Patriot UK says, if you think they have a plan to stop this, think again. Massive migrant complex built outside of Cardiff. This is the great replacement. It's not a theory. This needs reporting on and the world showing what's happening. So it's just a minute and he's showing what's going on. But they're building infrastructure to take over at every level. Residential neighborhoods that are currently established with families. Not for long. Because, I mean, how many 4-level apartment buildings are you going to have in your residential neighborhood before it's fundamentally changed, right? It's not going to take many.
Completely other end of the site here in Grangetown at the gasworks, look. There's just so many units here. It's unbelievable. And I'll show you now the shape of them. Right now, look, why can this country, that's the gardens, look, right? Why can we not build things like this? Big massive estates like this to take our homeless off the streets, to sort out the people on the housing lists. Look, it's all furnished. They got beds in there, right? They've got all the furniture they need. They've got washing machines, look, everything is in there. So they would never do this for our people, never in a million years. And all the builders here are unhappy about it. We've had loads of messages from people. It's absolutely shocking. Look, it just goes on and on and on. This is going to...
They'd never build this. They'd never build this if it was just Canadians on the street. They'd never build this if it was just Welsh on the street, right? And that's the point. How dare they take our tax dollars, send it to Ukraine, send it to Israel, and import anybody and everybody who wants to come, and then we're on the hook for it. They've got to live in housing built by us, funded by our tax dollars, because reasons? It makes no sense. Makes zero sense. It is an invasion that we're funding, and we should stop it because these criminal politicians won't. This is their power. And the people that they're bringing in are going to vote for them forever. And I mean, unseating these people is not going to be easy, in my opinion. Here's farmers, and they're protesting. In Canada, Quebec farmers. The French farmers, says GovEXE, are finally rising up to Ottawa, and its carbon tax and other attacks on the agricultural sector as protests break out in Rimouski, Quebec. If this goes nationwide, Justin Trudeau will have no choice but to call in sick with COVID until the next election. Maybe the Emergencies Act gets pulled out again, right? The War Measures Act. Daisy Media says, we will not comply. Canadian farmers are standing up in Quebec, and you can see kilometers, right? There's a whole bunch of stopped cars on the highway and people... I don't know why we have to put music behind everything all the time. I would prefer just people walking in the background. Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, nice to see you. You know, all that stuff. But Limp Bizkit. Is this Limp Bizkit? No, it doesn't sound like Limp Bizkit. Maybe it's that Tom guy. Here's more. Share. Again, Daisy Media. Lots of people on the road with Canadian flags, Quebec flags. And this is a drone overview. And you've got kilometers of people, and then they're down here too. A big protest, it seems. Now, it seems like these guys are just held up by the protest, and maybe other people are held up by the protest. But yeah, look at that. Lots of people who are protesting against government tyranny at this point in time. New Generation PPC says 400 farmers took to the streets of Rimouski, Quebec today against the destruction of their industry by the government. Only the People's Party and Maxime Bernier are willing to stand with farmers to fight back against the net zero and our regressive carbon tax. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to tax your farmers for producing food for the nation. Like, it's not like we don't need to eat. right? I quite like to eat. And if the farmers aren't producing food, then nobody's producing chocolate cereal, and that's a big problem for me. Mark Friesen says, Quebec farmers have been inspired by European farmers. Let's do this, Canada. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something indeed if the farmers and the truckers and the mailmen and, and women, everybody said no. Doug Ford says no. Doug Ford says, Ford warns Trudeau, stop the carbon tax hike or be crushed by voters. So, I mean, of course, Justin Trudeau called the police and said Doug Ford was threatening him with being crushed, right? Justin Trudeau says, oh no, Ford's threatening to crush me. Just a misunderstanding. But Franco Tetrazino says, the carbon tax is the worst tax you can ever put on the backs of people, and I can't believe the federal government is actually going to hike the tax by 23%. What don't you understand? That's apparently the quote by Doug Ford. Fundamentally, it seems like an attack on our country, even if in absent of everything else Justin Trudeau has done, taxing the air in the form of carbon tax, taxing energy the way he's doing it, makes Canada worse off. It makes us less competitive on the world stage. It makes us less likely to be able to produce products that people want to buy at a price that makes sense. And I've said before, if you produce a widget, here's a little widget that I can make, right? And if I can make that for $2 and sell it for $4, then the cost is $2 and I make $2 profit. Like if I can make the unit and get it to the store for $2 a unit and I sell it for $4 and I make it $2 a unit and the store sells it for $5 or $6 and they make their profit too. You have to make it in a structure like that. So if you own a restaurant, and the carbon tax makes pasta, which you mark up from, $1.99 for enough pasta for 3 or 4 plates of food. You mark that up to $10, right? But now all of a sudden the pasta costs $6, and so you have to mark it up to $20 to make your same profit margin. And I'm just fudging the numbers, but you get what I mean, right? You have to mark it up more to offset the carbon tax and all the other associated costs. And all that does is make your business not competitive. If there's a business that can get their product for cheaper, then they're going to do better than you because they can get their product for cheaper, right? And they can sell their product cheaper and undercut you in the market, and you're not going to get as many customers and so on and so forth. And so that's bad. That's bad for you, right? And Justin Trudeau is setting bad policies, and the carbon tax is one of them, and it's not the only one, that make Canada uncompetitive at different levels, all over the place. And he says that he's not, but he's an idiot. So don't listen to him. Here's Steven Tyler. He says, 3 heat pumps. And here's a quote from the article. She said no one at the utility can tell her why she's drawing more electricity when her habits haven't changed. She runs 3 heat pumps in her home and says she has them cleaned regularly. I just don't know what's going on. These Nova Scotians got extreme power bills. They're not alone. Heat pumps don't work. When John Fever opened his most recent power bill, he felt both stumped and defeated. The energy charges from Nova Scotia Power total $1,591.37 for the period spanning December 13th to February 14th. That's not including taxes or the additional $773.32 he still owes from his previous bill. Fever said he's on the brink of being disconnected, which has left him looking for a second job. It will be a job for Nova Scotia Power and then a job to live, he said. The 26-year-old rents a 2-bedroom apartment in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia with his girlfriend, their dog, 2 cats, and a pet snake. Their unit is on the top floor of an older home with a heat pump. They moved in last April. They plug in a space heater for about an hour on cold mornings, Fever said, but he still doesn't understand why his energy consumption spiked so high. They've unplugged the microwave and typically don't turn on any lights until after 10 p.m. That doesn't make any sense. That's insane. In January, in February, it gets dark at 5:30, 5 o'clock. So you're walking around in a dark house from 5 until, and then at 10 p.m., you're like, you know what? We got to put some lights on now. This is crazy talk. It's pitch black in here. I do not believe them. We don't turn lights on until 10 p.m. We use our blind stick. Come on, give me a break. It doesn't pass the smell test, buddy. A growing concern. Fever isn't the only one in disbelief over. No, I bet not. Over his latest power bill. More than 2,500 people have signed a petition calling on the provincial government to intervene after many of them also experienced rate shock. A rate increase of 6.5% came into effect on January 1st, but customers are questioning why their bills jumped much higher. They want to make it. And I've heard this was happening in Italy a long time, like 2 years ago. Power was so expensive that Italians who had large houses were living in a very small portion of them because that's all they could afford to power. And they were like taking things off the grid as much as they could. So like fire in cans to keep a room warm. I heard that from a person who was in Italy and he was visiting family, and that's what they did in front of him. And I said, I don't believe you. And he's like, it was my family. I was like, what? That's crazy. I was like, do you have pictures? I was like, I would take pictures of that. He said he didn't have pictures. I was like, man. Anyway, Ryan Garrettson says, so it seems crazy, but it works to control people because people look at that and they say, well, I can't fight it. I'm not Diagolon, right? Here's Australian. I think these guys are Australian. And they're talking about how this is being used to control people, which is exactly what I'm telling you. So here we go.
Our children are being indoctrinated that they should not eat meat, that the climate is the most important thing in the world, of course.
They're even being told here not to have kids, like don't have children. Like if you want to save the planet, don't have children.
But this is exactly what they are doing. They go against family values. They go against natural food. They go against freedom, because if you have to buy an electric car, they are maybe twice as expensive, and people cannot buy that. So it's not about the car. It's about you cannot go anywhere. You depend on public traffic. It's taking away your freedom. It's also digitalization. What we see is the digital identity and central bank digital currency. It's really a new way, a new form of communism about central planning, about controlling people. If you want to control the people, you have to control the CO2, because everything we do in life, breathing, living, traveling, eating, everything we do in life leads to CO2 emissions. And if you can control the CO2, you can control the people. And if you then have the digital identity connected to the central bank digital currency, which they say, we will not connect that. No, not in the first year, maybe not in the second year, but after 5 years, they say, okay, it's now so bad with the climate, we have to create this climate budget, this CO2 budget, and then we have Chinification.
Chinification. Ooh, that's a scary word, I think. And Chinification means, of course, like digital identity, digital social credit, the whole kit and caboodle. And that wouldn't be good, right? That wouldn't be good. One of the things I posted this on Twitter yesterday, and I think it's true. And I think that by extension, this makes men crazy too. Not having children makes women crazy. I think that's true. And I don't mean like crazy, like, your typical kind of like girl interrupted, put them in an institution crazy. I mean like high anxiety, worried about everything, worried that you're not reaching your potential, worried that you're missing out on life, throwing yourself into this thing or that thing, getting a dog, getting 2 dogs, getting 3 cats. That's what I'm talking about. You are not in the right place in life, and you know it, and you're trying to put yourself there. And society is conspiring against you to say, really what you want is to be a CEO. You want to be a girl boss. And really, like, that's not it at all. You'd be a girl boss of your family, right? If you were allowed to start one. And I think that by extension, I said during COVID that walking up to the mall or walking up to a store, I would be driving out of the store and I would see a lot of men walking up to the store kind of like, I'm not going to put on the mask. And then their women who they were with would cue them to put on their mask. Like, don't forget your mask, honey. And they'd put on their mask. And I thought, you beta, sucker. Like, oh man, just say no. Just say no. I could tell by their body language they wanted to say no, and they'd do it. And I thought, okay, men do what women want. Men don't particularly want anything. They want success. They want to, have a couple of dogs, maybe have a couple of acres, maybe have some chickens and some cows or something like that, something to work, to be productive, to give to their family. I think that's generally what men want. And maybe I'm wrong. I am a man, and I think that I have fun playing the game. That's the thing. I work a lot because I like to work. I do this show, and most people would call this work. I like to do this, so it's kind of not work for me. I view myself as retired, semi-retired, because all of the things that I do, I would do anyway because it's fun, right? And so I think that men put themselves in a position where the thing that they find fun, sometimes, not all the time, but ideally, the thing that you're aiming for, you put yourself in a position where that thing that you do, whether it's, sales or web development or, selling a car, whatever it is, whatever that thing it is that you do, you get damn good at it. And sure, you like making the money and people depend on the money and all that other stuff. But man, you wake up in the morning excited about that thing because it's that thing. And you're like, man, I'm going to be damn good at that thing and I'm going to do it well. Not necessarily because I want to make the money or anything like that, but I want to provide for my family. And so men do what women want. Women want babies, family, and men say, all right, fine. And it's one of those things where it's not an articulated, conversed. I mean, it is to a degree, but now anyway. But way back in the day, like if you were 25 and not married, people were concerned that you were going to be a spinster, right? And women being in a situation where they're stable enough to want children, and men being in a situation where they're stable enough and can provide for that situation, that will coalesce and everybody will feel like they're ticking exactly the right box. They're exactly where they need to be because they're doing exactly what they should be doing. And there isn't like, maybe I should be a board member on the PTA. Maybe I should get another job. Maybe, I'm not working so much here. Maybe I should do that. I think women not having children sends society on a strange course. And I don't know how to fix it because we've been propagandized to so often and so much and so robustly that if you start trying to have this conversation, a lot of people will reject it. Well, I like the option. Okay, fine. But like, you don't know the alternative, unfortunately. And so like, I think that our society should aim to have our country should aim to have a situation where single income can run a family. And certainly I don't think that you should prevent women from working. That's not it at all. But I think that we should have a society that prioritizes family, because Karen from accounting is not going to be on your deathbed telling you it's all going to be okay, mom. It's just not going to work. It's not going to happen. Okay. And we're not told that. We're told it's cool. Go drinking, go partying. Your friends are going to be around, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Christia Freeland says, we're delivering feminist family planning. Abortions. From affordable childcare to free contraceptions, women are able to make decisions that work for them. Let's keep up the fight for women's rights because we know that there's more work to do. Happy International Women's Day. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Bullshit. And it sends society on a weird, strange course that I think makes everyone crazy. And crazy in the sense of you're anxiety-ridden and pretty sure you're not in the right place, but you don't know where the right place is. And you try to figure it out. But what used to be common sense, everybody knew it, is now verboten. You can't say anything about it. And I mean, even me, people will push back on what I just said. People will say, oh, you don't know. But hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful